what's up guys? I'm really excited to share this video. This is a review of my first pair of bespoke shoes, Japanese shoemaker Ichigo Ichie. I want to start by getting one disclosure out of the way. This was a collaboration between Lee and myself, so I did not pay full price for this pair of shoes. This is an unbiased review and Lee has not had any advanced viewing, notice, or kind of line of sight into what I'm going to say, share, or talk about in the review or any of the content for this pair of shoes. Let's get started with the review. I'll start with a little background. Lee offers 4 different ranges of shoes. I went with the remote bespoke program, meaning I did the measurements myself, which I then received a pair of trial fitting shoes, ultimately leading to the final pair of shoes, which was received in this past January. This is the first pair of shoes that I ordered in the Baker Replica Reindeer leather. I felt like it balanced the nature of a tassel loafer out really well by picking a nice textured and rugged leather. I wanted it to be a very classic pattern, but with a very small, subtle, unique detail, and really make this separate from every other tassel loafer that's out there. Going the bespoke route, like I did for this pair, the first thing you want to get started on is measuring your own foot. This can definitely be a difficult process to go through if you've never done it before, but it's an extremely important part to make sure that you get a great result. After I sent in my measurements to Lee, it was a few months until I got my trial fitting pair. I made another video where I talked about where the fit could be improved. That video will be linked above here, along with the video on how to take your own measurements. After that, when I sent the shoes back to Lee, it was probably 4 or 5 months until I got the final pair. Let's do a quick overview of the specs of the shoes, then we'll get into a little more detailed review of each of the aspects, including one of the most important parts, which is the fit. So this is the bespoke hole cut tassel loafer made in Baker Replica Reindeer on my personal classic round last. This is a hole cut pattern, which basically means as we go around and look at the entire shoe here, there's only a single seam hidden on the inner heel, and everything else is a single piece of leather. The other aesthetic difference, as I mentioned earlier with the tassel loafer pattern that we went with here, typically on the apron, you have the strings attached here, and then this string is actually extending around and is adding the aesthetic detail around the top line of the upper. It's a holistic like fall stitch that goes around, creating the same aesthetic as if they were using a string to make that classic detail of the tassel loafer. So it really just makes it look from afar, just like your normal pattern, but it's one of these unique details that we really hadn't seen done before that made this pair, that much more special and that much more unique to my order. And the bottom work, we'll start here. So we've got the Triumph toe plates with the JF&J oak bark tanned leather outsoles. So we've got the natural forefoot with the red bottom waist, the classic aesthetic of this. It's not a sharp fiddleback, it's just very elegant. Moving into the heel, so this is a full leather heel stack that Lee has made by hand, and it's just really well balanced with the overall aesthetic and the stance of the shoe. Finishing up on the edge work here, it's not a natural finish, but it's very close to it, and I really like that you can actually see the different layers of leather throughout the forefoot, the welt, into the blind welted waist, and the leather heel stack. This is fully stitched by hand, I believe about like 12 stitches per inch with a natural thread color, and it's just really, really well done. Before we move into talking about the fit, I do want to take a look at these shoe trees here. So with the bespoke order, you do get the full bespoke shoe tree. This is all solid brass hardware. This is something that Lee actually sent my personal last to the shoe tree maker, and they made this to the exact specifications of my last. So when you insert the shoe tree into the shoe, It is a very snug fit. One of the unique aspects of this, and I'll take out the left one here, is this screw adjustment lever. So it is a hinged shoe tree, but one of the really unique aspects to this is that it's not as kind of like locked in as most hinged shoe trees are. This still gives you the ability to adjust it. Looking at the shoe and looking at how the shoe fits while it's on my foot while I'm wearing it, it is as good of a fit as I've ever had, but it's better than any fit that I've ever had, especially in a loafer. You can tell that it really pairs well with my instep and my arch. I do have a taller instep that has really been problematic for a lot of loafers. The trial fitting shoe was a little large all over. The concern there was kind of overcorrecting and making any part too snug, but the adjustment that Lee made between the trial fitting pair and this pair was done perfectly. There are definitely some opportunities to continue to improve the fit, probably around the top line and even narrowing the arch and the instep support a little bit more. Now I definitely want to touch on a few areas of feedback that I think are important to call out and important to share with Lee and those that are very interested in, starting a commission with Lee. First, this is probably the one that has like the least impact on the shoe, but this is just for the web shop. I have the benefit of interacting with Lee for, almost a year now, talking with him a lot on Instagram, on Facebook, but on the web shop, there is a plethora of information. And even with me knowing all of that, it still is overwhelming at times. The next two items around feedback really focus on the measuring and the trial fitting shoes. So starting with the measuring process, like I said, I made this tutorial on how I measured my foot based off of the tips that Lee and others had given me. When using a tape measure like this, there are always going to be nuances with kind of the start and stop point. Is the 7 representing a line after or the middle line? The other piece is the paper. Looking at the paper that I use, which is kind of the standard 8.5 by 11 here in the States, that's different than the standard paper size in Japan. But if you fax it or email it, there's the concern that the actual crop ratio or just the ratio of the measurements is going to get distorted. Send out a standard tape measure, the same as the one that Lee uses. Then you're removing all those variables and it's just down to how accurate is that person actually pulling the tape around their foot. Likewise, for the trial fitting shoes, they are trial fitting shoes. They're not supposed to be fully finished and fully made shoes. But one thing that I think definitely complicated things for me was that the left and the right trial fitting shoes were two different shapes and two different size last. There was a little bit of educated guessing going on and saying, yeah, let's just do the same exact adjustments. Overall, Lee was able to use his knowledge of what he did to those lasts and what I was telling him to make the right adjustment. I would probably have preferred if they were both the same style and the same last. There are a few key things I want to touch on as we kind of circle back here. So number one is the leather. This was the first pair that I had in this Baker Replica Russian reindeer leather, and I'm really happy with it. And it's really breaking in well, creasing well. It's just a very unique and robust leather, exactly what I was hoping for this pair. Next, the overall execution, the quality of the work from Lee, I'm really impressed. The stitch density and just the hand stitch consistency on the outsole. It's something that I enjoy just looking at the shoe as much as I enjoy wearing it, which I think speaks volumes. For many of us that have owned a number of really well-made shoes that are also handmade shoes, you can tell the difference when you pick up a shoe and it feels like it has substance to it. It wears like it does, and I'm really happy and impressed with it. The fit and the experience, I think, are almost probably the two most important pieces, because you can't really control that. You can control what leather, you can control the pattern, you can control those other elements. The fit, I'm really pleased with how much attention to detail Lee put on making sure that this came out with the right fit. The remote bespoke and just bespoke experience, this is the first one I have, so in fairness, I don't really have a baseline or I have another experience to kind of compare it with. That said, Lee was really great to work with. Definitely was very detail oriented when we were talking about fit. I'll be honest, I mean, it took some time. I'm glad that it took the time, and I'm glad that he insisted on us taking the time to get it right. When doing a review like this, I think the obvious question always comes down to, would I recommend it or what would I tell others to do? Yeah, I would. I mean, he does great work. This is one of my favorite pairs of shoes. If you are looking for a certain aesthetic and you're not necessarily comfortable in doing an order fully remote like this, then maybe it's worth it to start off with like a ready-to-wear order from Lee. But I would definitely 100% recommend any of his offerings. I hope this was helpful in giving some insight into a shoemaker that it's not as prevalent as many of the others that are featured on this channel. Definitely remember to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, share your thoughts, share any experiences that you've had with remote bespoke, or maybe you've had already with Lee. Definitely really interested to hear about that. Appreciate everybody watching, appreciate the continued support and engagement, and I'll put the link for Lee and Ichigo Ichie Shoemaker in the description so you can check out those options. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.